Hi everyone joining the call. We're just waiting a couple of minutes before we kick off so that the folks registered can join. If you've got someone in your team or someone else you know that's a startup that was interested to come today, this is going to be recorded and we'll share it online tomorrow. But ultimately, this is just going to be a bit of a sampler as to what the SproutX experience is like, a bit of our track record. We've got Angus on the line, who's one of our alumni, who's going to share some answers about his experience. And then we'll also talk about the application process and what we look for in a successful application. I think we've waited long enough. So thanks to everyone for joining the call. My name's Julia. I am the Program Director of SproutX. I'm here in SproutX's headquarters here in Melbourne. I'm joined by Maxi, our Community Manager, top left for me, and then our alumni, Angus, down the bottom there. Thanks, kids. So today is a bit of a catch-all Ask Me Anything info session about the SproutX program, track record, our alumni experience, and then of course what we look for in applications. This session should probably just go for 30 minutes. So we're keeping it tight. We're going to upload the recording tomorrow for anyone who couldn't make it. And this is really about you guys guiding what you want to hear more of. So I'll tell you a bit of my plan for the session, but please do drive the agenda and drop your own questions in the Q&A function. Thanks, Angus, for kicking off the chat. Please feel free to intro yourself to the other founders on the line, or stay in stealth mode. Up to you. We've been around this is our 5th year running an Accelerator program, so it'll be our 5th cohort. And we started in 2017 as a joint venture between Findex, which is the largest agribusiness financial services firm in Australia and New Zealand. They have over 14,000 farmer clients. So it's a tremendous kind of parent company behind us there, both for you as founders, but also for us in the agtech industry. And then the National Farmers Federation. And we began with a relationship with Artesian Capital, which exists today in a different format. And they are very active in early stage startup investment, and particularly around agtech, clean energy tech, and most notably with their Grain Innovate Fund, also in broadacre cropping. So over that time, we've invested and mentored 30 startup companies, many of whom are still active today. We know in startup land, it can be very volatile. So we're very proud of the track record of those teams. In Victoria alone, and we are a national program, but just the Victorians, they have generated $10 million worth of revenue, created 55 jobs for the state, and have raised just shy of $6 million. And so we're really proud of those metrics because we are coming in at an early stage with founders, very much so beyond ideation, but we're at this pre-seed window where we're looking to take you from high growth period of momentum in that business and get you to seed stage. And that's the niche that we're looking to fill. So how does the program run? We run a six month program where every 5 weeks we will host a sprint workshop. So that will be a mix of online and in-person this year. Angus had the full online experience during COVID in 2020. So his testimony might be a little different to what yours will be. But we really want to bring back that mix of in-person, face-to-face, intimate one-on-ones with investors, with founders, with mentors. So how will that be navigated? So when we have an in-person session here in Melbourne, or potentially interstate, we are looking at some exciting tours in South Australia or Queensland. We cover the cost of up to 2 founders to travel wherever they need to from their home base to attend. So if we have a week with a regional tour, we have demo day, we have a mentor mixer that is going to be in person. We will fly those teams from wherever they are for that sprint week. For the online weeks, we know no one likes to sit on Zoom. And so SproutX never runs itself like a 9-to-5 school for adults. We know that you're busy founders, so we make it very consultative. There'll be some one-to-many sessions in still very small group, probably around 8 to 10 people. with investors or mentors, and then we make sure we've allocated sufficient time for one-on-ones for you to do personal work, go back to your business, back to your family lives. So during sprint weeks, we're looking, at a Monday to Thursday, and then for online sprint weeks, we'll even that out over a fortnightly period of perhaps 8 hours per week during that fortnight. So that's an idea of the time commitment. A bit more intensive when we're all here in Melbourne, and then more flexible when we're tuning in, much like this on Zoom. So that's a little bit about the format. Just checking in. I've sort of raced over that, but I'll probably come back and sort of talk a bit about the types of people we bring in. But I'd probably just like to take a small segue, because we've got Angus, one of our favourite alumni, on the line today, and Maxi is just going to take him through a bit of his experience, so what you can expect of, I guess, your peers, because the cohort effect is very important for us. We had a great group last year, even though we were all online, that dived in on each other's wish lists, if that was for introductions, for support, reviewing material, and that's an incredible part of the Accelerator experience that can't be really understated. So he'll talk a bit about that, what stage he was at, and then what he got out of it. And please do jump in if you've got specific questions for Angus and for myself as we go along. Maxi, I'll let you intro Angus.
Cool, thank you, Julia, and welcome everyone. Just going to do a very quick intro about myself. So I'm Maxi, and I look after everything marketing and community sphere. So what I do, I lead community events like Demo Day, which is kind of like the graduation event at the very end of the program. Also things like mentor mixers, business matching and stuff. I also foster engagement between founders, mentors, people in our food and ag industry, partners, etc., and investors as well. So without further ado, just wanted to chat to Angus a little bit about his experience. So we have Angus from Actuary. He's part of our 2020 cohorts. He's kindly joined us to chat about his experience. So true to the SproutX diversity, Actuary is an agri-finance, a software as a service startup. But I'm going to let him, the founder, share with you his journey himself. So just a few quick round questions for you, Angus. So tell us a little bit about your background and what drew you to apply for SproutX originally.
Yeah, no worries. And look, thanks for having me. I'm happy to come and talk about our experiences. And I mean, one of the things that I actually found from joining SproutX is that not only just the cohorts within that are your peers that you go through the program with, but also the people from previous cohorts as well. Very, very are very open, and I jumped on a call with many different people from across the different SproutX cohorts who've basically done it before me, and they were all really helpful. So yeah, I mean, in that respect of paying it forward, anyone that jumps in, or even now, I shared my LinkedIn in there. Feel free to reach out if you've got any questions about anything outside of this forum. But yeah, sorry, what was the question again?
The question was, you touched on like what drew you to apply for SproutX, but in terms of background, have you dabbled a little bit in, say, other programs? Have you worked with someone, say, within the same industry or cross industry? Like what led you to, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so mine and my co-founder's background is, I mean, we met at university doing aerospace engineering, and we'd worked on a bunch of different types of engineering R&D projects together, as well as, I guess, software product development. And so, while we were working on our company, actually, probably for 5 or 6 months before joining SproutX. And the primary reason why we joined or why we applied effectively to SproutX, I mean, number one, I mean, there's I mean, maybe not number one, but like obviously there's a big reason to join because of like the capital, the name association, Findex, Artesian. That's all very good, in terms of looking at your startup resume. But primarily for us, it was about getting fast tracked around making industry connections. I mean, effectively, yeah, myself and my co-founder were, a complete industry outsiders when it comes to ag. And so we really viewed this as a way to fast track a lot of those introductions and effectively get our foot in the door with a lot of companies when it came this way. Because, I mean, I suppose you always hear the cliche around, from investors, for instance, we always want a warm introduction. I mean, the same is true of like everything. You can always call people, but what's your hit rate? Like 2%, and you're going to be doing a lot of work. So it makes things far faster and easier, even if it's, you don't make a sale or whatever, but the quick introductions to people to evaluate your own hypotheses was, really, really invaluable for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably to give our attendees today also a little bit about just kind of like a pre-accelerator and then post-accelerator kind of like flair to it. So what stage was Angus at? So at the time of joining our accelerator program, what were you at, and where do you feel after the program, your position?
Yeah, so we were, we were pre-revenue. We had no investment. We'd gotten a little bit of money through government grants, but barely enough to buy 2-minute noodles. And we had about half of a product. So we had done a lot of work on the back end in building, say, our analytics, because, just to give you a little bit more of a outlay of what we do, and we sit somewhere in the middle of space, financial, and agricultural tech. So we use satellite data to help forecast and evaluate crops, as well as environmental data to help agribusinesses, grain purchasers, traders, or land purchasers evaluate either land or commodity pricing more effectively. And so that's sort of what we do. So we kind of sit there in between industries a little bit. We've got customers sort of from all different sides. So it's definitely interesting place to be for us. But yeah, effectively we really had a hypothesis coming into it, and it's definitely a hypothesis that we had collected a lot of data around. Prior to joining, we'd done, I think we'd reached out to nearly 400 different people who would be end users in the agribusiness lending space, as well as a whole bunch of others from across the industry. And that's mostly cold calling. You write a small script that can scrape LinkedIn contact details from certain demographics. So it's there's ways to do it to make it easier. But effectively, we had a whole bunch of data. We had about half of our product built, and we had a very strong conviction that we can help improve the accuracy in a lot of these different processes using non-typical data that was in there. And that's, for our customers, they would typically use financial data sets, and we're bringing in non-financial agronomic and environmental and climate data sets into their workflow effectively.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely that the part when you mentioned about the cross-pollination, the warm welcome, and also just sort of like coming to us with who you're after, and us being able to just filter through and get you straight to that 2% of the funnel, as opposed to have to go through the whole, cold call journey. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing with that. I suppose one last question I would like to ask you to just sort of like wrap this up. Is who would you recommend SproutX to? Is there sort of like stage in startup, people with specific sort of bottlenecks, people who are looking to get in touch with particular industries, mentors, anyone?
Yeah, all the above. I think we were like, I'll be honest, like initially we were looking at the the equity percentage that SproutX wanted to take, and we were sort of evaluating, well, is this are we going to get our money's worth in this respect? I mean, it's like we thought it was pretty good, come out of the gate with a $800,000 valuation for the company. I think it's slightly changed now, if I'm right. I think you guys get a better deal now, so I'm jealous. But I think it's all above. So we really tried to take advantage of like everything that these guys had to offer. And really, Julia, as well as the team here at SproutX, really went above and beyond. Even going so far as to operate in some capacities, helping us, identify good, prospects or leads, or as well as wrangling up the introductions for us as well, which is super fantastic. And so we effectively came out of it with probably an order of magnitude more data and a lot of validated or invalidated ideas that we had from the very beginning. We came out of it with a good selection of mentors who we continue to talk to this day, and additionally, from the I suppose like the credibility that it came with going through SproutX, we're actually able to double the investment amount through an angel investment group as well coming into the program, and so that was really, really cool. Effectively having the Findex and the artesian names and SproutX being quite well known within the agriculture industry, that acted as a catalyst for us to raise a small pre-seed round, effectively coming into the program before we'd even started. So that was really, really helpful in that respect.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to thank you so much, Angus, for sharing us your journey. I'm going to quickly wrap this up and pass on to Julia so she can share more about the program formats with you. But Liam, I did see your question pop up. We'll be including any of the questions that we missed. This one is for you, Angus, so we'll probably just include it in the email afterwards and send it out to everyone.
No, cool. No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Over to you, Julia.
Yes, so I think I just quickly nip on to what we look for in an application, and I'll whiz through that given there's a few questions I've received about that. And please be guided by your comments. So I'll get through that quick as possible. So what we look for is pretty standard for any accelerator program. So traction, team, and the opportunity. So on traction, we don't have a preference for in-market teams over pre-revenue, because in some cases we can have a team that's in market, but perhaps the threshold of their market is petering out quite quickly. So we look at more the growth potential of the business model, the ambition and the skill set of the team. And we look at traction a bunch of different ways. So whatever you've got, demonstrate. If you've got letters of intent, numbers of customer interviews, Angus his team was a real standout in that regard. How many customer interviews had you done, Angus, during your exploration phase? Heaps, right?
Yeah.
So
nearly 100 sort of in-depth ones. And then again, it's primarily because we're industry outsiders. We were, I suppose, a couple of data scientists, software developers, and we had an idea, but we had no idea about the industry. So I think it was necessary in our case.
Yeah, so don't feel like you'll be disadvantaged if you are a pre-market team or you're at proof of concept, early kind of contract payment stage. Definitely still apply. We'll assess you on the merits of, I guess, the opportunity that you're chasing. And we're really excited to read some of those applications. The team, obviously, we do accept sole founders, but if you can demonstrate that you've got additional capability in a co-founder or co-founders, advisor network, that we look upon that really favorably, and obviously balancing technical with the business side. That's very important. Around the IP piece, I've had some questions with people asking, does unique IP need to be protected to qualify? And at this point, no. That question is really just trying to weed out if we introduce you to investors and when we take a small equity stake in your company, are we invested in the entity that owns the IP? And that is really just trying to weed out people and businesses that franchises in essence, white label franchises, or who are relying solely on contractors, external contractors who aren't part of the team to really deliver the value of their company. Because that's going to be very, very difficult to position yourself as a startup if that is how you're running the business. And we do limit our investments at this point to Australia and New Zealand. So I'm always really disappointed to have to tell amazing founders internationally that we are not able to work with them at this time. But that is just the case around making sure that we have a cohort effect. We can provide the value we want to give you in its full. So we do require that you are in those 2 countries. Any other questions at this point around what we look for in an application? Perhaps while they're coming in, I'll just mention the process from here. So we are open, likely might stretch it out just a little bit longer for you guys, but let's say mid-May, and then we'll be going straight into shortlisting. And if you are shortlisted, there is a phone screen, just a 20-minute phone screen, and that will be with just the internal SproutX team. And the purpose of that is just to get to know you personally, understand your relationship with the founders, how long you've been working on it. So it's more of like, consider that like the interpersonal interview. And then if we're happy with that, we move forward to the formal panel interview, which is a 45-minute interview diving into the business model, the opportunity, and sort of the material that you've given us in your application. We might poke around for some gaps, and that will be 2 members of the SproutX team, a member of the board, and we'll also bring in an external party from our mentor pool, who ideally will be either in your kind of industry or as close to it as possible. So if you're pitching more of a food tech proposition, we'll be making sure that our mentor from Simplot or Mondelez, Mars, is going to be on that call so they can better challenge some of your assumptions. And then from there, we'll move very quickly with offers, and we'll be having a mid-June launch. And so all those dates will be finalized. We ultimately are in a, post-COVID, but COVID tentative world where we have a plan, and we hope to deliver on all of those exact dates in the cities that we propose to be in. But we are just finalizing those for you, and we'll make sure that we give them with ample notice so you can plan your own lives and your own businesses around that. And the program will run from June to November with some of the more, shall we say, meaty events like Demo Day and our business matching. So that's a new event this year. That will all be towards the end of the program in November. All right. I'll address the question from Liam that's popped in around what kind of support. So was there any technological support? So because we're so diverse in the companies that we work with, Liam, we don't, the SproutX team certainly doesn't claim to be able to coach yourself or Angus in the software build or the deployment or anything into that extent. What we look is kind of the universal business challenges that every startup in differing ways has to become more investment ready or more export ready, which is really the focus of this year's program. How we can offer you technological support or more one-on-one business support is through our office hours that we broker either in advance. So we've got our set partners who will look at your company structure, tax, grants, legal and IP questions, marketing and communications questions. We've all got mentors who do office hours from the private sector in that space. But for technological questions, if I understand it correctly, you might benefit from office hours with our Amazon Web Services partners who offer engineering, IT solution, and also business development support for our teams through the Activate program. So not only do you get $25,000 worth of free credits to use over 2 years, but they give of their time liberally to the SproutX teams. So that might be where you get the support, or through a mentor with past experience as a founder in bringing SaaS software products to market. So it could come in a variety of forms, but it's certainly not going to be anyone from the SproutX team offering you a technological support session, shall we say. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that a little bit
Yeah.
as well. For instance, the AWS support guys that we got introduced to, I mean, we still talk to them regularly as well, and they're very helpful when it comes to discussing things like, okay, what in our software backend is the most scalable, like to help us be the most scalable approach, as well as, help us managing everything from, how much we're spending on cloud compute, as well as how to manage sort of our deployments and security. So we still talk to them regularly. And leveraging other founders, technical founders, as well as the mentors, if we had any technical challenges. I think the network's huge, so we were always able to leverage that if we had any technical hurdles.
Yeah, and so the reason we're able to do, I guess, as much hands-on work as we do is because we'll take up to 10 teams, but that's kind of just like a ceiling. We work with who we can deliver value to. So as part of the interview as well, we'll be asking you what you want to get out being involved with us, because I think it's very important that our expectations on both sides match up well, so that we can give you as a founder what you need to make the next step in your company's growth, and that there's no surprises, there's no disappointments, there's only kind of meeting in the middle and making sure that we're delivering value. So because we'll take up to 10, but we keep things capped quite small. So for example, last year we worked with 5 teams. You have the benefit of a lot of one-on-one time and a lot of our, I guess, social currency, our reputational currency, to make bespoke introductions, to spend a lot of one-on-one time looking at your material. Maxi, for example, is a seasoned marketer and designer, and so that could be, as simple as looking over a pitch deck. We are like all accelerators. There is an element of pitch coaching, and we're really fortunate to work with a gentleman called Lior, who is based in Israel but travels around the world running pitch workshops for founders. So that is an element of the show business and the theatrics, but ultimately, if we can help you communicate your value proposition to any audience, it's going to help you on your way. And I think everyone underestimates the importance of that just communication element, and a lot of people don't like it and don't want to work on it and avoid it at all costs. But ultimately, it will pay dividends in the future. Cool. Awesome. Any more questions for the public? I noticed a lot of, cool. This is a good question. I think the reason why a lot of alumni are software based is not necessarily, actually, that's an interesting one. So I've got a 2-part answer for, do we have a preference for a software versus hardware? I think in general, there are just more software startups out there because they're arguably easier to start on a bootstrap budget. Perhaps in the past, we did favour software indirectly because we were making a very small seed investment. And for teams that had hardware and, I guess, CapEx requirements of a hardware startup, that financial contribution from us would only get them a fraction of the way to where they needed to go to potentially just build one prototype, for example. So sometimes for a venture capital fund, they want their money to produce, get the team, 3 steps ahead, or be able to subsidize, salaries and some development work for a period of months. But for a hardware startup, potentially what we were offering in the past wasn't going to kind of get them too far. So we have certainly worked with hardware companies in the past. Probably our most media profiled is Provenir. So they are Australia's first mobile abattoir. They commissioned, designed, and now own a semi-trailer's worth of unique technology that travels around the Victorian and New South Wales countryside. So whilst the SproutX experience allowed them to then raise the capital necessary to build and commission a significant piece of hardware. We've worked with autonomous robot picking kind of companies before. We work with IoT kind of sensor devices, which is obviously a bit of a hybrid of hardware software. But I would say we don't have a bias. It's just sort of the nature of what comes through our desk. And we work with very diverse companies. Agri-finance in Angus's case, we've worked with agritourism, insect protein, high welfare beef, all the way through to supply chain solutions, packaging, and then the traditional ag tech that you probably expect of our accelerator, which is, technologies in the farmer's field, improving farm decision making, these kinds of things. So there's no bias. We work with the best, and the best can vary year to year. But we do ensure that we have a nice cohort blend, and we are mindful that within a given year, we won't crowd it with anybody who may be a direct competitor with other teams. So that is taken into consideration. Cool. All right. Seems like everyone gets a little question going towards the end. We'll basically have this recorded, uploaded tomorrow. Any questions specifically for me or anyone in the team, I will get to personally. So I will have your follow up with you after this session. But you all know where to find me, you know where to find SproutX. And I would really encourage you, if this sounds interesting, to please drop in an application before May 7. It's very streamlined. We just want to know what the opportunity is, and we want to feel the excitement of you and your team to get involved in this space. So highly encourage you to apply. Wonderful. Okay, I think we'll call it an evening there. But thank you everyone who's jumped on. Just keep the questions coming in the email and LinkedIn afterwards, and we look forward to seeing you in the application pile.